Hey, good morning, low-code Campfire.
Hi, Dale. I hope I didn't mess things up. I had joined, but I was signed in on a different account. So I left and came back.
We recognize you. In whatever account you come in, you can play in Campfire. So low-code Campfire episode 15, welcome. Let me run through. For anybody who's new, we do this every week. We get together and talk about issues related to low code in general, Plant and App in specific. And today we're going to, since Reza has volunteered, we're going to talk about some new features coming up in our next release, or the plans for them. Whoops. This is a weekly gathering, and it's for all skill levels, just anyone interested in Plant and App particularly. We have a bunch of past episodes. Almost all episodes are published on our YouTube channel, which is another way of saying that it's being recorded. So share confidential information is with care. The agenda is pretty straightforward. We're going to say hi, and then it's pretty much open topics, and anyone can jump in at any time. If you have noise going on behind you, please mute. We have a questions and topics scan that you can do here, and we'll also send out a link. I got reminded today that we haven't actually sent out the link lately for the feedback form, so I'll try and get that included in there as well. Anyone new to the group today want to say hi? Looking at the group, I think everyone's been here before. A reminder that we continue our campaign for Capterra reviews. If you haven't done that and you're familiar with our product, please do a review. Other than that, I'm actually going to skip out of that. We can go open for a little while. What's on anybody's mind for Campfire? And then we have some prearranged topics we can get into.
I have a question on using debug mode when you're tracking through, in my case, email pop and tracking. I don't know how to use the debug mode.
Excellent. Well, hello, Jim. Yep, we were working on that a little while ago. I think I had mentioned that, and it is terribly handy when you're working with automation to be able to use the debug mode. So I'll jump in on that here real quick. So in Plant and App, under automation, in this case, I've set up a job, and this is the IMAP job that I set up. And so jobs have triggers, they have actions. I'm going to edit this job so we can see it. So we have some general things, the name of the job, what portal it relates to, and the debug mode. So I've turned on the debug mode, and this provides more information in the job history. So we'll see that in just a second. In this particular case, I have one trigger that's established. So the trigger tells when a job runs, and then once a job is triggered for any reason, you can have lots of triggers, but once it's triggered, then you can define a set of actions. In this case, I didn't want to define any actions. I am just defining I just wanted a trigger to run. So the IMAP trigger says go get information from an email account. So I've provided some credentials. I'm not going to get into that right now, but we're telling it to watch the inbox. It's only going to trigger for new emails, and we're saving attachments to a directory called temp. And in this case, if you send me an email to my email address and it has case 2391 as the subject, then it's going to get processed. Otherwise, it's going to ignore it. So this job is very focused just to test out one particular case, and you have to have a very specific subject. All we're trying to do, really, just to fill in the context, I was working with Jim on a case where we're trying to make sure that attachments get saved to the place in to our attachment saved directory. Okay, so that's the setup. And so if we cancel out of that and look in the history of the job using the history button, every time the job runs, it puts information into the history. Because we have that debug selected, it's going to provide additional history. And so what we're seeing here is a JSON look at every context variable that gets created when the job runs. And so we have these things called IMAP internal statistics. If we didn't have that debug mode turned on, the job would run with success, but we wouldn't see any of this. So in order to force this to run, I guess we can send an email to, let me do that behind the scenes here. I'm going to do a new email item. Address. Let me drag this out here. Say it's a live test because things always go wrong when you do it live, right? And since we're processing attachments, I'm going to attach a attachment just to see it work. So I'll hit send. So we'll give that a couple of seconds to run. But when it does run, we can take a look at the history. Let's see if it has gone on. Yep, so it ran. And so we see who the mail went to, the subject, the date sent. All this information is in the log because the debug mode is enabled. And then Jim, for your stuff particularly, the mail stuff, whether or not there was an attachment, what are the name of the attachments, how they were renamed when they were stored to the folder, all that is included in the as content that you can then parse. So that's the long answer, right? The short answer, which I probably should have started with, is all the context, all the variables that you have in your job are revealed in the history.
And I think, Dale, just a part two to this. So, the automation has what we're looking at now, which is that history and the ability to kind of see these logs and things here. But you can turn debug mode on in a lot of other features as well, like forms and grids and things like that. And in any of those cases, what it's really doing is writing to the disk logs additional information. So you will want to kind of remember to turn that off when you are not, heavily using it, because it can impact performance, or at least start filling up, your disk more. Depends on how chatty things are. Like forms are much more chatty, but you can, from the logs section there, get also access to download these as files and all of this under system. Yeah, so you can download these logs and see all the additional information in there and what the system did. And so sometimes it's handy for errors, sometimes it's handy just for tracing out things and seeing like what were the values and different things like that. So
we were working, it's the automation feature behind the scenes is called Sharp Scheduler. So I've downloaded that log. I haven't actually looked at this at least recently, so I'm grabbing this. Are you saying that the debug setting that we just set added this additional content?
It should. And so maybe the scheduler acts a little different, I'm not sure, or it needed like a refresh or a second to kick in, but just kind of a FYI is that if there were issues or like, every kind of thing that it's doing, and especially like in forms and things like that, this is super, super handy to kind of see like, oh, okay, I, submitted the form and then these actions ran, and it keeps track of when you turn the debug mode. It's always logging things, but usually it's errors or just basic stuff. But when you turn the debug mode on, it gets more verbose. And so you can see like, okay, when I triggered this action and I was going to send an email, this is what I had available to put in the email, that kind of stuff. And so you can kind of see where if something fell
So-
off or whatever, where, when it happened, how long it took for stuff to run.
So I think that this would probably be a good chance to dive in a little deeper on that. First of all, just to point out, this last entry here, 150731, this is when that email was actually processed. So it was idle at 1504. Then it actually got something to do, and we're logging at the info level. It got something to do, there was a trigger, and what the trigger was, and it's telling something about what it's doing. It's executing actions, it's done executing actions. So I think this is, this information, I'm going to guess, and we'll check this out in just a second, but I think this information is governed by another mechanism, and I want to show you that mechanism. It's pretty important. But the one that I was talking about with that actual debug checkbox, it's putting the information into history and not enhancing our logs. But if we wanted to understand more about what automation was doing, and I'm this is live, right? So one of these times I'm going to get bit by this, but I want to there's this within the configuration manager, there is this area .NET Nuke log for net, and let's see if we can find Sharp Scheduler in this list. It's actually hard to parse out, so it's hard to search, so I'm gonna find it here. So, yeah, there it is, right at the top. So Sharp Scheduler is set to info level logging. And so let's change this to a debug level. And so now I'm going to try and find it again. Sharp. So we have all these different products: Action Form, Action Grid, APM, Sharp Scheduler. And I'm going to change this from info level debug logging to debug level. And we'll verify this in a second, but I think we're going to see a lot more voluminous stuff show up in the logs as a result of that. So I'm not absolutely certain that it's necessary, but I'm going to restart the application to be just absolutely sure that we do this, and we're going to get see the change to the result. And so we'll let the site refresh, and then we'll go ahead and send another. Oh, what did I do? Did I blow it up?
Maybe give it another refresh.
Sure. So maybe it wasn't ready yet. Let's go into automation. And so now I've got to send it another email. So we'll do that. And still want to attach a file. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to do the same file and send it along. So what I would hope that happened here is that, I mean, we have the debug logs turned on, which is going to put things into history, and we'll see it work. And then also we'll download that log again and see how much more voluminous it was in debug mode. So let's try that. We have an error. That probably has to do with the restart of the system. So let's take a look again at this. And this is another email. So it did in fact process this email, and it did send it to the folder again. And this time, Jim, this will be for your this one, because we sent the same folder twice. Now there's already a thing in there, so it renamed it. It gave it a different name so that it doesn't collide. So let's take a look at the logs now. So we go to Sharp Scheduler, to logs system, and we'll go grab the Sharp Scheduler log, and I see it's much bigger now. So let's see if we can find where all this starts. Watching the timestamp there. So 1507 was where we were before, and it didn't say very much at all. But now we're seeing
you can see in the lines there, see how it's saying info before, and now all the lines are saying debug.
Correct. So we're seeing debug, and we're also seeing info things. And so if you were looking for, hey, why didn't my trigger do what I thought it was going to do, this is leaving a ton of clues. It's readable. It's entirely likely that you can figure it out. But when we ask for logs, this is to say, well, you're telling us you have a problem, show us the logs, we'll take a look. That's really the procedure. Go into Log4Net and turn on a higher level of debugging, run the process again, capture the logs, and then we review them to see what happened, where it went wrong, what errors were logged, things like that. So just as a matter of good practice, when you update a log and you're done with it, you no longer need it, that Sharp Scheduler now is set to be very voluminous. And so if I were to go, my problem is solved, I want to go into Sharp Scheduler and change this back to an info level. And then I see that my API endpoint at some point got flipped to debug, and I don't want to be debugging that as well. So I'm going to turn that down a little bit as well. So we save those changes, and that's going to, that impacts how logs are done.
One of the things, go ahead, Jim.
Does that use debug mode checkbox go in there and basically put that in to the configuration here temporarily?
It doesn't. So there are two separate things we talked about today. One is this, when we edit the job, this checkbox is saying put more stuff into the job history, which is only going to show up in this history section. And without that, that history section is going to be very minimal. But with it, you're going to see the result of your context variable. So it's a good debugging tool. And then the other one is more the core of the product. What step by step did it take? Reza, I think we have on the books some ideas about enabling debugging without having to go to the configuration. Is that something you want to talk about? Or?
Yeah, that was actually what I was bringing up, is that, we've been talking about having that kind of dashboard or control panel that is able to look at your app overall. Right now you have a little bit of that in like the general settings section, but wanting to kind of consolidate that with the getting started and have kind of the first stop that you would see as an overview of giving you summaries about, hey, you've got this many entities, here's some errors, there's updates available. And one of the things we wanted to do was be able to pull out of that config there and have little toggles. So one, you can see, and it'll let you know, like you had the API maybe turned on more verbose than you meant to, or forgot it and left it, but you can see that, hey, warning, these are turned on to this level right now. So maybe they'd be drop downs because there's multiple levels. But you can see what your logging is at, and you can change it, and it would go ahead and update the config for you and refresh things, so you don't have to go in there and change that by hand and then kind of go look, did I remember to turn that off or anything like that. So
right, so this core feature using .NET Nuke Log4Net is something that we've built in, that I suspect .NET Nuke built into their product and we're leveraging. And it has a very specific configuration. You add logger names that we're using. We have levels, and so it's at the core. This is how we have to interact with it. But we want to make it easier to turn on and off by checkboxes or drop downs rather than having to come in here and do it.
Mm-hmm. And be able to see and know what you have, without going to look,
Right. But until then, all the logging is controlled here in .NET Nuke Log4Net in the config file manager. and probably worth you taking a look at them to see if you have any of them turned on to debug mode, or trace mode, I think is another one that might even be a little bit lower, a little bit more voluminous. Unless you're having errors, you probably don't want to have those turned on.
So I would almost say there's a, that history is kind of unique to the automation, the scheduler, right?
Yes.
And so there's really almost three things at play here. There's what Dale's got here, which is overall for this entire feature across the board, what level of logging do I want? And then there's what's in the automation there, which is, hey, for this particular job, let me into the history log for you things additionally. And then you'll see, like, especially I kind of keep going back to action form. On each form, an individual form, you can turn debug mode on. And I believe then for that form only, it will write in verbose logging versus all forms. So all forms would be the config. A individual form would be done at the form level. And it will write into those same logs that are on disk there, but only for the ones that you've turned it on in the settings here.
Is this the one you're talking about, debug
Yes.
mode for a form? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I haven't, I've not used this one. So this happens when the form gets loaded. Is that correct?
Yeah. So from the moment of all the triggers and the initialization of a form's kind of life cycle. So at this point now, it's already logged a bunch of stuff, and it's showing you it here on the screen. But it's as you interact with the form, type stuff, submit it, everything like that. That's all getting. So this is kind of debugging and telling you all your different settings. So behind the scenes, this is what the system uses to render your form and things like that, right? And it's kind of, so you can see like what's set and what's bound in there and different stuff. But then as the form is executing and doing things, it's writing into the disk logs, similar to what we saw when Dale pulled up the one for the scheduler, that, hey, I did this first, then I did this, and here's what I had available to me, that kind of stuff. So maybe if you like, if you were to submit that form or something, it would keep going, because the form has many different touch points.
So all I did was turn that on and refresh the form, and so we're seeing debug information showing up in the.
Yeah, and so you see like that XSL transformation. So that's because really all the form did was initialize there, right? So it's telling you I did the pre-init actions and things like that. And there probably wasn't any there or anything major happening, like actions that were running. But if you were to have like filled out the form and hit the button, right, there'd be more going on now below it, even if there'd be a time gap, because this was all just getting the form loaded up, right? But then as someone interacts with the form, it's running SQL statements, all that kind of stuff. You can see, hey, here's the SQL that ran, what was said in it, that kind of, if you had that going on, whatever. There's so many different things you could do, and
so as long as we're doing this, we're going to take a second and say Campfire 15 form test, and we'll make this a page builder skin, and we'll add it, and we'll just add a basic pre-configured template. Action form, drop it on here, manage it, and we'll do it at just the standard contact form. And find this debug setting and turn it on. And otherwise, I'm just going to leave it just as it comes. So the contact form renders, we get all this stuff. Let's go ahead and try and fill it in. And we try and send it, see what happens. said it sent it. So with all that, now if we were to go to logs, and I'm going to refresh to make sure I get the most current system action form, and that has grown since last time. So now we can see the name of it. And we can see it's saving, validating, checking all the fields. So we're getting a ton of information, executing. Now we can see our actions. There were 3 actions there. We're doing send mail number 2158 and who it went to. We're doing and how long it took to complete. We're doing this is the second action, another email that's going out. So the first one was probably, the first one was a new message from, so this is going to the admin. This is going to me. And then the third action was that show message, your message was received. So it provides a complete list of all that it did in what order, and
how long each action, how long it took to run and stuff. And where this really comes in handy is, think about sometimes when you have some of these complex forms and you say submit, and all it does is come back to you and say, there was an error with the form, contact the system administrator or something like that, right? And you're like, well, where did it fail? What did it fail on? You'd be able to come in here and see like, oh, okay, it was the 4th action. And usually it'll tell you what was wrong as well and stuff like that. So it's pretty handy.
So very good. So I didn't know where that that debug was going here and what that was doing. So we'll turn, again, best practice, you want to turn it off. You don't want that box showing up on your screen, but you also don't want it to log a bunch of stuff, but that's another tool in the toolbox. So good point. In we had a question, I'm going to try and close all in the same topic here. We had a question, and we'll do this perhaps more as we go, but in search, as you set up search in the advanced settings, same way, we have some debugging things that debug additional information. So if you want to see how the what searches are being done, you can turn on logging there. How the indexes are being done, there's additional information there. So you can turn on indexing, and that also is slightly different content than turning on the information, the debug mode and log4net. So we have a couple of different levels of, depending on there's some product specific things where we turn it on, and then there's log4net logging, and all that is kind of comes down when we get into these thorny problems of why isn't it doing what we want. Our answer is turn on logging and then send us the log files. So it's in both in the product and in the log4net area. That was a simple question, Jim, but a half an hour answer.
Give us a nail, Jim. We'll drive it home with a sledgehammer.
That's right. Well, I mean, it's the tool's so easy to use until it isn't, right? And it's like you don't know about all these hidden things that are like, okay, and I often take a leap going the wrong way, going, oh, it must work like this. And it's like, no. Okay.
Well, and somebody with a development background, which I know you have, Jim, the ability for me, just looking at those logs real quickly, it's like, okay, this is being very specific about what order events are being raised and processed. If you had any question about, those, the order and what and why, those logs are going to reveal that really quite simply. So, sometimes I have a hard time stopping within search, and in that same advanced section, there is a download log files button, and that'll send all the logs. I don't even think they're limited to search logs. All the recent logs will be zipped up and sent for download. So that's a great one that you can grab to go get those logs if you want to get all of them, or within log section, you can pick one and grab it. We skipped over it, but this event side, this is the same log information that shows up when you're looking at manage admin logs. So we're trying to make it where you can stay and work within our product rather than having to deep dive into .NET Nuke. And so we've added those event logs. You can open them up and see the errors. Let's see what's going on there. Okay. Reza, we had promised entities within entities, and if you are still up to showing some of that, I think it'd be great.
I am, definitely am. Let me share real quick. Yeah, so this one kind of came in. One of my developers, we use the system a lot, and she's a little newer. She's our user experience front end developer. And as she was starting to use the system, she ran into something I think we all run into, and decided to do something about it just kind of locally. And then she showed it to me, and I thought, wow, this is really great, and it's working. Let me bring it forward and see what people think. And if it's well received, I'd like to include it in the next release. And so just kind of setting the stage for it, I've got a blank canvas here, a new app. It is 1.16, so it's a total development build. So, but I think everything's pretty stable here. So let me zoom a little bit. Okay, so let's say we were creating something like, I don't know, my example I always go to is like a ticketing system or something. And so I come here and I say, hey, I'm gonna have these tickets, and it's gonna be a parent level thing. So I come here, and this is kind of what I run into, and it's always this chicken and an egg thing. I'm gonna have like a title for the ticket, and a description, and I won't get carried away. And then I realize, well, if I'm gonna have a ticket, I'm gonna have like a status, right? Is it new? Is it assigned? Is it, rejected or closed? That sort of thing. And so I come and I say status, and then I go, okay, it's gonna be an entity. Oh no, I don't have that entity. And what would normally have to happen here is I'd probably try to fill in the ones that are primitive, right? That I'm able to add in. But then I'd shut this down, and then I'd go and I'd create a status entity, right? And then I'd come back here and I would do status and then link it up and then go, hey, I also want, who is it maybe sitting with, or what's the state of it or something like that, right? Like other lookups, what tag is it related to or something, what product or feature or something, right? So what we've done, instead of having you go back, is you kind of just leverage like existing functionality. And so what would happen is, and this will work both for if you just wanted to do an entity or a list of entities. So I'm going to say create new. And what it does is it opens me up a new tab. I have everything available to me, but you'll notice the regular app builder menu is not there because we don't want to keep you focused in on what you're doing. The other one is still open. The idea is, and I could, still do anything I could normally do. And I had set up, the only thing I did do to this environment is and so this is part of what I kind of wanted to show is like, maybe normally you'd say, well, I want this under the tickets thing I'm creating. But the problem is we haven't saved that one yet or created it yet, so it's not available to me. I did have a page for lookups though, which is kind of also a common pattern. So I'll say, okay, well, this is just something that's going to hold statuses, right? And I'll put it under there and kind of just do what I would normally do. Just make this quick and dirty. I could do permissions and things if I wanted. Let's say they can do all, or actually, we'll give it to all users. Yeah, because maybe, well, now you'd be logged in here. Either way, that's kind of a separate matter. So I'm going to save, and you'll notice it's kind of telling you, hey, this is just, so we'll adjust this messaging, but trying to have a way to make sure people know, like,
you're in a subordinate level.
Yes, right. And so you hit save, it creates all your stuff for you, the table, the UI and everything like that. And then, you have an opportunity. And when I saw this, it's kind of giving you that message that, hey, when you say confirm, you're going to close this and go back, right? So I thought, well, there's an opportunity. Maybe you're not done working yet. And this is something I've noticed in general with entities. Like we put a feature into workflows not too long ago where when you hit save, I don't want to close the workflow. I want to save my progress. I want to maybe go and take a look at the page that was created, but I don't necessarily want to leave here. So that was something I was thinking when I saw this, that I thought like, because you really don't have any option other than to confirm, and it's just kind of letting you know that happened. And you'll notice that you come back and you're still sitting right where you were before, but now I can pick and say, okay, that's status, right? And if I wanted to do something like maybe have tags, and there's going to be multiples, I can do so it would be kind of neat since this is part of what I'm showing is not like it's pretty straightforward, and we'll go ahead and complete, and we'll come back and take a look at this in a second. I just want to kind of show it all the way through. And so now I can say title, and let's say we're done here. So now when I hit save, the other two entities were created already, right? But now you'll see I have my ticket and I have tag and I have status. And so if I go over here to ticket, and I say new, now there's no statuses because I haven't entered that. So why don't we real quick, and I've forgotten to put tags under the lookups, but why don't we just real quick hop over here and we'll just say like actually, this could have been created from the other side, but we'll just seed a couple data elements in. Oops. This is DNN 910, by the way. I kind of mentioned that on Wednesday. 116 is being heavily built and influenced and checked against 910. So far, no issues. So I know some people have already jumped ahead.
Yeah, this looks real handy, Reza. I was working with a client the other day on it, exactly this, just the design pattern that you're talking about, where I had to, you get so far and then you have to back out and do the subordinate table and then go back. And so there's a little back and forth. Not that it's huge, but it makes perfect sense to me to do it as a tab and under control, and you've made sure that they have their way back and things get refreshed. So this feature makes a lot of sense.
So it's, even as
natural.
much as I kind of bumbled around there, like you can see how quickly you can, much more quickly and without kind of losing your flow and focus. So really just kind of, I thought like wanted to get it in front of people and see what you thought. There's still time right now because this is very early in the release to kind of take the feedback in and just wanted to see like what are we missing here? Is there anything that would, was that short of maybe adjusting the messaging a little bit? Do you guys see any inherent flaws, or like would this would be intuitive and useful? I don't know why I keep picking the wrong ticket.
Like Dale, I've run into that problem also, where didn't think about that all the way through until I started building, and have to go out. So I like this. The other problem that's similar is when I realize I need an extra attribute of one of those lists that's common. I don't know if there's a way to edit that in the same time.
So do you mean like when I created the, so one thing I noticed was like when we created the new statuses, for example, right? And then you saw like, I'm done with ticket, I went to ticket, and then I went to try it out. And there were no values for status, right? So it's kind of almost similar problem shifted over to the actual part, the UI that's been built, which is, should it maybe offer you the opportunity in that little pop-up to actually go and view the entity that's being, because a lot of times what happens at some point, I mean, is you come and you say, okay, I've got my ticket thing built. I want to actually go look at it now and work with it or something, and you come here, and I mean, we put this shortcut in to open this in a new tab, but would it have been handy to offer that up, like when I created the related entity, and then it had that box, and it's like, hey, do you want to close this and go back, or do you want to go and put values in?
Could you open up the ticket again, please, as a yeah, in Entity Builder? So, out of curiosity, I mean, just what's the term? Brainstorming here. If there was if the save button had a save and go, or whatever the right terminology is, so just like we have save and test in workflows, if it was if every time any entity, if there was another save and go, so it's gonna generate and then allow you to open the core page. What do you think about that?
So basically here.
Yeah, if right there was save and go.
Mm-hmm.
So now, or even on this new pop-up that you've got, although I'm not sure it belongs here, because I'm thinking even on the core entity ticket, if you wanted to see the result of what you just did, save and go could cause all the normal save action, and then open the window in a new pop-up for editing.
So wanting to keep things brainstorming too, and wanting to keep things like a unified experience. What if, like right now, when you say create an entity, you see it kind of pulsing and doing its thing for a bit, right? And then it takes you back to the list, and if you have a lot of them, it's kind of sitting there and you got to find it and all of that. What if always then you got such a confirmation, right? And it could be aware, that, hey, I'm a dependent one. And it kind of says, hey, first of all, your entity and the pages, all that stuff was created successfully. You're good. There were no issues.
Sure, save complete.
Do you want to go back to the list? Do you want to keep working, or do you want to actually go view what you did?
I like it. Because that, if you were just doing a checkpoint save and you have more properties to enter, you could go do that. If you want to see the impact on whatever entity you're working with, or seed it with some data, you'd be ready to go do that. And then if you whether you'd worked 1 or 2 or 3 deep on creating things, you'd be able to work wherever you are. I think it'd be interesting to do.
Okay. Yeah, I think that that's a good idea. And then it's similar to how workflows is, so you can kind of keep working.
And really, it's the same. I mean, when you're looking at the list of when you're looking at entities and you have the pencil icon, it's really that same functionality, right? Go to the page and in a new window, or so you're, rather than having to come back out, you're able to work where you're designing.
Another thing is, so we closed it out, and we came back here. Now it has kind of highlighted for me, right? But it hasn't actually selected this one yet. I would need to select it. But an idea is that, well, first I thought, like, hey, why even bother with all of this? Why not just have it be picked, right? And this is all closed down. But another idea is like, or leave it like that, and you could keep going here, right? You could do another one and another one, and kind of build out, I'm gonna, especially when you're early creating a new one, you could know that, like, there's 3, 4 of these I'm gonna need. Why not just let me jumpstart and create all 3, 4 of them now?
Yep.
Pick the one, but the rest of them I can just pick because they'll be available.
So if you'll stop right there for just a second, now that you've defined state or list of tags, you might want to work with them and add another property to them. So would there be a icon perhaps wherever to be able to go and jump into that from here?
Like off to the side
Yep.
of it a little bit, like to take you to it to see it.
Yeah, an edit icon.
Yeah, I think so. I think especially too, if you think about other times where you're coming back into one that's created, whether someone else created it or you did a long time ago, and you're wondering like, hey, what's the difference between status and state? Maybe you're wanting to rearrange where they're placed or something.
Mhm.
And so you can, it could open up and you could see what's there to either add them or just view what's there, right? I
Yep.
think that's
Or a new property for it would I think lead to a more hierarchical design, which is where we're going anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Okay, so I'm going to show one other thing that kind of spawned all of this. So, this dependency tree, especially when there's a lot of entities, it gets very unruly because it shows you like every possible combination of stuff. And so what I'm working on right now with this to make it, I think, be more useful is instead, like now I can't click on it, right? Because if I go to ticket, for example, you'll see there's a new icon called Dependency View. And when I click this, what it's doing is taking me and saying, okay, here's the thing you picked on in green, right? And in kind of order of hierarchy of where it is. So if it was like a third level deep or something like that, like if I went to tags, it would kind of, so it's sometimes you're 3 levels in or 4 levels in, and it's from left to right, going to prioritize, here is the primary place where ticket is, right? And then it's kind of saying, here's all the other places that it's used. I think that one of the things I've always seen is kind of the order in which it shows this stuff. So this status tickets is really showing that relationship. But I was kind of wondering, like, is this well received as well? Would this make it easier? Like sometimes you're like, I want to go maybe make a change to tickets, or to, another approach at this is, hey, I've got this status thing, I added a field, or I made something required that wasn't. Where all is this used? Now here it's kind of a simple case because it's only used once, right? But if let's say I was using its status, so I could reuse status in a lot of other entities, but I'd be able to kind of trace out and see where is everywhere that this is referenced. Like tags is another good example.
And is the idea then that you could go and select tags for editing? You're looking at status and you decided to do something with tags, you could
or any of the related ones, and then kind of go into it and work with it from there, and come back out. I think also because the original view, by the way, there was not a list view of the entities originally. You worked purely out of here. And so there's edit and delete buttons and things. We could also throw in the kind of open and a pop out, so that you can kind of say, well, let me go see this. Where is it? What's that relationship? How's this look in the application? But just kind of wondering, like, is that, Jim, would you find that useful? And
I would find, I don't use dependency view because after I build a few entities, it becomes unuseful. And I think if I could target it to an entity, like your example of, oh, I added a status table, and where is that being touched? That would make it very, very useful to me. Because right now, you get 8 or 10 tables linking around, the view gets to be so big. It's just like, okay, I don't use it very often. I love the fact of being able to, especially more on your status table, your state table, where I want to add a field, what potentially could I go break?
And so just to kind of see that in, like kind of showing its usefulness when things are used in more than one place. So now if I go and look at like, status, for example, you can see that it's used with tickets, it's used with documentation, that sort of thing. Same thing within like tags. You see, it's kind of
very cool.
And that's the reason it's so much more verbose here, is because it's a list of, right? And so it gets connected up to more things and in more places. Now that I can kind of, this is very, very hot off the presses, like today type thing. And so now that I can kind of see it in things, I think we can also make sure that this is making sense. It's shown in the right order, like do things, should it be on top? Should it be on bottom? That sort of thing. But, or is it showing you relationships that don't really make sense? And so we'll get it dialed in, but just kind of wanted to make sure we're on the right track and that this would be helpful, and see if anyone had any other ideas. I think the stuff we've talked about has been really good. And so I think both of these are super, super highly likely to be released in 1.16. And so thank you. And,
very nice. Can I take back for a minute?
Of course.
All right. I really wanted to, last week we were chatting with Ben and he had a bad connection. But we were kind of getting into the child portal support question, and he particularly is one of our DNN Sharp clients that has a particular idea. So I think I'm just kind of putting Reza and Ben in a room, right? Because Reza, you wanted to understand, what does child portal support mean to you? What does it have to look like in order to make it go? So did I ask that question right, Reza?
Yeah. And I think, Ben, if you want to kind of tell us a little bit, one of the things that sometimes comes up is did we really need child portals here? Or could we have accomplished what we were trying to do maybe through the database layer of saying this is the idea is multi-tenancy, a bunch of people, even child portals is that conceptually, is that I'm in one instance able to host multiple instances and have them appear to be separated. Now, in the case of child portals, they really are separated. They share some things, but they're truly separate portals. And in the case of like using the database for that, you could introduce a concept of like tenant ID, right? And say, okay, these tables, these things are, when I put records in, this is for customer 1. This is for customer 2, and then you kind of build it in that when customer 1 launches up, they're only seeing the things that are, it's always kind of part of the where clause that goes along with things. And so just trying to see, like, is that really what people are after? Or is it like, no, I really do, these need to be separate portals because, and maybe we need both, or one or the other more or quicker. And so just wanted to be able to help the development team, especially understand the why behind the ask, because it's a little bit of work, and there's some things we can do to get it in sooner, but it might involve, especially getting it out the door, not having access to certain features in App Builder, but the rest of it all works and is multi-portal, and then we can layer some things back in rather than wait months for a big build-up,
So there's a couple of different scenarios I have working with child portals. The biggest one would be basically every client having its own domain, and that's where that whole child portal will come in, because every child portal basically manages its own alias, its own domain. They do share the same tables. The tables in the apps that I've created automatically have portal ID as one of the fields. So all the data is mixed in together in one table based off of which portal is actually the one running, is the one where it's going to filter that data out appropriately. But every instance is separated because it's its own, basically its own website. What we're looking at is kind of like designing a master template of a website, and then the clients would basically spawn off their child portals, mimicking that template, and then they would add in the data that they want specifically for the certain areas that are already designed for them. So it's really forcing them more to, a specific structure of a site, not one where they get to add and design anything that they want. They have to abide by the structure that has already been designed. But again, each one is its own separate, complete website. They don't share images or anything like that, or the data that's uploaded. And again, the biggest thing is because they're also individualized domains.
Is when we say like images, and I know we've talked a while back about this, so there's images people are uploading into the site that they can see. Let's just, for everyone else's sake, call it like a photo gallery type thing, right?
Right.
But then there's images that are like the logo of the app or the site. Is the logo the same? Like, are they on, are they used, or it's separate for them and looks like it's, okay.
Yeah. Some will opt not to use one, so there won't be any. Others will opt to use one, and it's individualized for them. So every time it goes to their own site, they have to see their own logo if they put one on, or nothing if they don't.
Is there any, you had mentioned that, and so maybe this already answers the question, there's the tables that hold like users and roles and things like that, and that's what comes with VNN, right? But then there's the tables you've created, and I think you just said that those tables are shared between the child portals, and it knows how to pull the right data out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, is there any need, so there's logical separation of data, which seems like what you've got there. And then there's physical separation of data, quotes around the physical, which means there is a separate roles table, a separate,
right.
Truly you have your own database, you have your own database. Is there any requirement or need to have physical separation of them? Or is it just as long as people are only able to access their own data, that you could share the tables? Because then I would think that with this template, you have if you decide for some reason you need an extra field or something, you've got to go and add that field to all of them, right?
At the moment, I don't, and I'm not saying I won't ever in the future, but I don't see a need for physical separation, meaning separate tables per child portal. I do think it's easier to manage when there's just one table and you're just adding one additional field to indicate which portal it goes to. Yes, when something is changed in the underlying structure, obviously it's going to change everywhere, but that's also one of the reasons I was requesting, and I haven't played with it yet, but I know at some point you guys released it, the ability to programmatically export a forms XML and structure and all that. That's one of the reasons I had requested that feature as well, is because what I was looking to do is programmatically create it. So basically portal 0 would be the template that I would log in as an administrator, and only I can basically see that. Anything from number 1 on would be the child portals. And then if I make any change to portal 0, I can hit a button where it will export that XML and then programmatically import the XML to the appropriate modules on all the portals. So basically, I'm pushing out my changes. So if I make an underlying table change that requires a form to have new code, I can just change the form and then push out that form code to all the child portals. Hopefully that made sense and answered your question.
It does, it does. Do the forms, is there a need that you see right now or have right now where the forms would be different from each other? Or is it they're kind of the cookie cutter template, and like first name, last name are side by side and they can be side by side on all of them? Or is it like, oh, they want it to be first name above last name and like needs to be a different form then, even though it's doing the same thing, they're laid out different or they take different actions or something?
Yeah, I'm going to do my best to explain this, but this might be a situation where if you want one day, maybe we could do a Zoom and I can show you. I can't do it, unfortunately, right now where I am at. But basically, it's one display form and then another page that's actually a shared page that has grids in there. How do I even explain this correctly? It's for all intents and purposes, let's say there's about 4 or 5 modules that I use. They're all the same, all the way across on every single page. What makes the difference is the module ID, the portal ID. So based off of that, because like I said, I keep the portal ID, I keep the module ID. The module ID is going to then filter on what data in that table belongs to that particular module. So then it's only going to display that on the display form. The edit form is only going to show the items for the editing of that. And it's more of a grid. So for argument's sake, I create a template using HTML and I use, Bootstrap and all that other stuff. And I put in placeholders in a whole bunch of different areas. My code reads those placeholders and says, these are the spots where you can add text. These are the spots where you can add images. And then they can upload text and images appropriately. And it basically blends it together at the time of display. In the table, it's just basically saying, slot 1, here's the text, slot 2, here's the image, slot 3, here's the text, for whatever. And then when I'm running it, I pull the template, I pull the data, blend them together, and display it.
Okay.
That's
So
like
it sounds like
very
most,
basic description.
Yeah. It sounds like, again, a very basic summary is that it's really multi-tenancy that you're after, but you've, based on limitations of DNN and DNN sharp at the time, not that you did anything invalid or anything, you just went with, hey, I can accomplish this multi-tenancy through child portals. And I can, the couple of key things that stood out was having the separate URLs or domains resolve, and then having the tenant awareness, so that it gives that very isolated, but primarily around the data, not so much the structure. The application is, it's not like user A is going to learn how to use this separately than user B. The experience is the same. It's the data and what renders out of it that's different.
Right. And the other thing I do want to point out is while it's not right now, I was planning to include this, is the theming as well. So every site can have its own individual theme.
Okay. Excellent point.
I mean, right now, I don't do that. But like I said, it was something I was looking to enhance in the future so that it further gives the illusion, so to speak, that they are really separate sites.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. It's really helpful. There's 3-4 things that are really kind of key considerations that you've raised, and we're having,
like I said,
conversations.
if you want to take a look at it one day just to get a real understanding of it, I have no problem. I'll hop on a Zoom with you and like run you through it so you can see how it works, and it might clear some concepts up and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. And you've also given me a good idea for maybe a low-code cafe where we can show one way to accomplish, if you were just starting clean, multi-tenancy, all within one portal. But I definitely understand that you've already got a lot of stuff, and it's like I want to make the shift over, take advantage of new features and things like workflows and stuff. I think for us the biggest challenge right now with this, or where it's kind of hung up or doesn't work, quite honestly, is with the entities in particular. They kind of need to be tied to one portal versus another, and things like that. But that was what I was kind of alluding to, that maybe initially here what we could do is have it work against one master portal, but then it'll be disabled under the children for now, so that it's not breaking or conflicting or overriding things and stuff like that. That's some of the challenge it has. But a lot of the other features work just fine, right? And all the stuff you have built already would work just fine. And you pick up things like the one-click upgrade and the better upgrading, and just the overall experience is a lot better. And that is the go forward path, and just trying to make it easier for you to at least get your feet into the new world. And then as we develop out this multi-portal awareness, then things can kind of come back online. So, okay, that helps. And I definitely want to follow up with you and take a look at a little more specifically what you've got, as well as kind of do some like, if we did this, would that work for you here in this case, and to get you to be able to come over. And I know that, like we've kind of said in the beginning, there's a lot of ways to skin this cat, if you will. And so this is one of them, and there's some other ones.
Yeah,
too.
hey, listen, if there's a way to do what I'm looking to do in a manner where it doesn't require child portals, that would actually be a lot easier because the child portals, they have to be built, the pages have to be built, the modules have to be added to the pages. There's a lot
Yeah,
of
there's
coding I put in
overhead there,
there.
definitely. Yeah.
But the main thing, like I said, is the logo, the theming, things like that I don't know of a way to make that individualized when you're talking about, in reality, they're all really the same portal. In addition to the fact of the domain, like how.
I think the logo and the domain we can solve. I think that would work. I'll look a little more into it, but I believe there's a way we can accomplish that. It wouldn't be using the actual logo field of DNN, and we touched on this maybe last week or something, where you can adjust your skin a little bit to have a container, and then you can accomplish the logo with like a token, right? And it would go and fetch the right image and show it there, instead of just kind of being hard coded to whatever the portal's logo is. Because at the end of the day, I need a picture up here in this corner or whatever spot. That's definitely doable. I think the separate URLs would work, and the licensing would work with that. I mean, we've just put some stuff into place in 15 for that, release 15, 115. And so I think it really comes to, though, I need to look at the separate theming, and that I think is the big one, especially if these people aren't going to be like admin level access and being able to see, here's all the users in the world, here's all the roles and stuff, right? They're just users of an application.
Yeah, I'm looking to just basically give them a list of the available skins, and they pick the one they want, and the system will just change based off that.
And we might not be too far off for you. Well, I'll keep in touch on this. Let me take back what we've discussed here and kind of confirm some things, and I'll reach out.
All right, cool. Thank you.
And if anyone else, I know others were interested in this as well, we can keep this, not maybe at this moment, but we can keep this conversation going. And I'd love to hear about an alternate use case or need.
Well, very good. This hour always flies by. I appreciate having everyone with their questions, with their issues, and we certainly want to make Plantain App useful and better. And I think that's really the theme of what we do each week. If you have any feedback, well, my email address, I think it was in there a couple of times in the middle of this episode, and the feedback form is going to be on, it'll be linked from our invitation to next week. So happy low coding, and we will see you in a week. Thank you much.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.